Hello everyone, my name is Phawx. In this video, we're going to be talking about the recently announced Asus ROG Ally X. This is not the successor to the Asus ROG Ally. Instead, it's a lateral upgrade, meaning that if you were to think, should I upgrade to an Asus ROG Ally X? I don't really think you should. Should you buy it if you've never had an Asus ROG Ally? That's another question that we're going to be talking about in this particular video. So let's start unpacking everything we know, and we can try to extrapolate based on what has already been revealed in the Verge article on what should be on the Asus ROG Ally X. So let's start talking about it, if you should buy or upgrade the Ally X. So first things first, let's start talking about what we know. Number one, it has the same Z1E processor and the same display. Those two facts alone mean a lot of people are not going to be interested in the Asus ROG Ally X. Now you may be asking yourself, why is it still using the Z1E? If you've been following my channel for a while, this shouldn't actually come as a surprise to you. This is something that you should all be well aware of, and it's something that I talk about often. There's just nothing that is currently out from AMD where they could offer anything to Asus. Now, Asus could use an AMD GPU on the handheld, but then you're really going to be in a situation where you're really going to have to minimize how much power that DGPU is going to be taking and trying to kind of work together with the CPU. Now, AMD does have something where it kind of understands both the DGPU and the CPU at the same time, meaning you only have to specify one TDP and it would lower everything down to it and try to fit within that scope. However, that's not really the best, especially with a battery-bound handheld, because we're really trying to maximize how much battery life we can get out of this device. So having a single APU is going to be the best. And looking at AMD's roadmap, there really isn't anything until the end of this year that'll be available. So Asus doesn't have anything right now. Moreover, because it's the Z1E, which is technically an offshoot of the 7840U, it is a semi-custom design, which means that it doesn't fall under the umbrella of the standard AMD Radeon drivers. So we still don't have anything when AMD Radeon drivers are updated and then brand new. You can't use those. You have to wait until Asus works out something with AMD to get that latest driver pack to you. So for people that are already Asus ROG Ally owners, you have nothing to worry about because any work that Asus does is going to apply to the Ally X as well as to the Ally. This is actually better news and better for legacy customers so that they don't have to worry about having some type of weird mismatch of drivers. Everything's going to be pretty much the same. So whatever happens on the Ally will also happen on the Ally X. That's actually better from a customer support angle. So I can understand why Asus is doing the angle that they're doing. And truthfully, they don't really have much of a choice here. Now, on the display side of things, this is something that I really wish Asus did their OLED stuff on there, because I've been looking at Asus's OLED laptops, the new G14 and G16 laptops that came out, and the OLED panels that they worked with Samsung on and NVIDIA to kind of like formulate this whole thing is outrageous. It is such a good panel. It is probably the best OLED panel that I've ever seen, and I really can't say that I've seen anything better. It's just so smooth, and all the features that Asus does automatically inside of Armoury Crate, where you can actually enhance the, if you're worried about some type of burn-in that's going to be happening on the screen, you could have your main window being the only thing that is like full brightness and everything else gets kind of darkened. Really cool features that Asus does that I really wish that the OLED panel would have made an appearance on the Ally X, because at that point you'd be like, oh, it's a clear upgrade path. Like if you have the Ally, yeah, I'd probably say you should upgrade. But knowing that it's the same display and same processor, there's not a bunch here. Let's talk about what is there. First, let's talk about RAM. We're going to jump into the Verge article and see what they say. They say, again, no specs today, but Asus says the Ally X should now have more than its current 16 gigs of RAM, so you can allocate lots of it to the GPU without impacting the rest of the system. This is something that I think a lot of handhelds should have done from the beginning. They should have had 32 gigs starting. This is just my own personal philosophy. In 2008, I had 8 gigs of RAM. 2015, I had 16 gigs. In 2020, I went to 64, which was kind of a bunch, but I was just doing a lot. Typically, I would say that for the average person, 32 gigs of RAM, especially in 2024, this is the minimum that everyone should target. I don't care if it's Windows, I don't care if it's Mac, whatever system you have, the minimum should really be 32 gigs of RAM. With that out of the way, with the Ally X, and based on what's saying here, I would anticipate that the Ally X is going to have 32 gigs of RAM. Why this is important is that the APU shares this system RAM with the GPU. Now, typically how this all works on all the different handhelds is there's a pretty minimum UMA buffer size of 1 gigabyte, meaning that you are subtracting 1 gig from your total system RAM. So the operating system, Windows, Linux, whatever it is going to see 15 gigs of system RAM available. Now, if you increase this UMA buffer size to 2, 4, whatever, that is going to just decrease what is available to the system RAM. So if you make it 4, Windows is only going to see 12 gigs. So this becomes a balancing act that can be a bit problematic when trying to run modern games or older games that need more system RAM. It's a balance that you really don't want to be kind of inserting yourself into. Now, this is a buffer size, so that doesn't mean that this is a restricted amount. This isn't the cap. That's the start. It can grow over that if a game wants more of it. However, when you target it to 1 gig, games ask the operating system, they say, hey, how much VRAM do you have? And with a UMA buffer size of 1 gigabyte, it says you have 1 gig. And then it will kind of automatically say, hey, your system isn't good enough to run this, even though it definitely is. So having a larger UMA buffer size reduces a lot of errors that can, nag screens that can pop up, and make for a better user experience, especially for people that don't know how PCs work. Having an error screen saying, hey, your system's not good enough, when technically that's just a silly number that it's looking at to validate. For people that don't know, this is going to be a better user experience. So having 32 gigs of system RAM, which what I think is going to be on the Ally X, I would say you could do like 8 gigs of VRAM and then have 24 gigs of system RAM at all times. This is going to be a much better situation. And then any modern game that would require more than 8 gigs could go ahead and use that. And then when we're in a handheld situation that's a gaming-focused device, Windows should still have more than enough RAM that can easily just give that out without having to worry about trying to free up any RAM or using swap at all. So this is a much better situation, all told. The next type of upgrade that we have that I think is very important is the battery. So let's start taking a look at what they say on The Verge. We're not looking at 30 to 40% more capacity, it tells me. We're looking at way more than that. Asus won't talk specific specs today. Instead, Yen asked me how much battery life I'd realistically like from a revised handheld. I say I'd want to double the worst case battery life to 3 hours, since I'm currently seeing maybe 1.5 hours in intensive games. And he says, it won't disappoint your worst case scenario. Okay, so let's unpack what that actually means. Now, the Asus ROG Ally currently has a 40 watt-hour battery. This was the same as the Steam Deck LCD. When the Steam Deck OLED came out, they bumped that up as well. Now, funnily enough, this is something that the handheld scene has seen before. From 2016, 2017, 2020, we always saw the battery increasing. So this is not something new to us, but this is something generally that everyone wants because we just want better battery life without having to carry around external battery packs. The important thing to note here is that he's saying that it's not just 30 to 40%, it's more than that. The Steam Deck LCD to Steam Deck OLED was a 25% capacity increase. That was 25%. They're saying that it's more than 30 to 40%. If we do a 50% increase, that means that the Asus ROG Ally X would have a 60 watt-hour battery. Now, if we try to understand what's going on there, where Sean is saying I would rather have that doubled, that would mean that we're closer to 70 to 80 watt-hour battery packs. That's going to be a fairly large battery. Now, in the Verge article themselves, they also show a slice of it where it's kind of teased on a shelf somewhere where you can see the black model. And taking a look at the dimensions of the device, we can see that it may look a little bit more ergonomic, but it may be a bit thicker. Having said that, would Asus be able to fit a 70 to 80 watt-hour battery in there? Maybe. Maybe they can do that. If we're at 50%, that's a 60 watt-hour battery, which is still a solid increase. If they got to 70 or 80 watt-hour, that would be fantastic. Other improvements that were mentioned in the Verge article, it should have a longer M.2 2280 SSD slot, which is a more standardized slot, so you don't have to find those 2230 drives, even though 2230 drives are more plentiful and better prices now that the Steam Deck and ROG Ally have been so popular that we're starting to see more of those at much better pricing. 2280 is still a better bang for your buck, so I'm glad that they went that way. And the Ally X should be even more repairable with redesigned joystick modules that are interchangeable and upgradable. That's pretty interesting. To be able to swap out the analog sticks for something else, that's an interesting thought. I actually like the analog sticks. I don't really have any particular problem with the analog sticks on the Asus ROG Ally. I do wish that the D-pad and face buttons were updated. Those are one things that I think would be an easier upgrade, and they do make mention of that as well. And last but not least, they also talk about the SD card slot has been moved, but it hasn't been moved because of the reported problems that everyone had previously. So there's a lot to kind of unpack there from the Verge article. Hopefully this means that the SD card has been scrutinized heavily from Asus and that we shouldn't expect any particular issues. When I do get my Asus ROG Ally X, I'll be running exclusively from microSD cards, so we'll be able to put that to the test. For what it's worth, my Asus ROG Ally's SD card slot still works, though I know lots of people have had problems. So it's not saying that it doesn't exist, but when I get my Ally X, I'll be doing most of my testing, almost all of my testing on the microSD card slot. Now to answer the question of this video, should you upgrade to the ROG Ally X? Based on the information that we have right now, it is going to be more expensive than the Asus ROG Ally. If you already have the Ally, no, there is no real reason that you should do it, especially because the Z1E already exists and you have the same display. Knowing those two things, there isn't any reason for you guys to really do it outside of some nicety upgrades. But for how much it's going to cost, I couldn't recommend it. Now, if you're from a Steam Deck LCD and you didn't get the Steam Deck OLED and you wanted to tread more into the Windows side of things, maybe. It remains to be seen how much the Ally X is. I still like the Steam Deck LCD and the Steam Deck OLED. If you're on the Legion Go, no. Also, you're going to be in the same realm. Now, the one thing for the Legion Go is that it is a native portrait display. However, the image quality is much nicer and the display itself is much larger. So you're going to be sacrificing some things, even though the Asus ROG Ally is a much better gaming screen, especially for Windows PC gaming. That's unquestionable. That is 100% fact. Having a native landscape screen that is VRR on the Asus ROG Ally makes it the best handheld display. For what it's worth, it's the same panel that is now on the GP2 Win Mini 2024 edition, so you have that same benefit, which is why I kind of wish that the OLED version would have happened, because then we might have been able to get it on other handhelds, but we're in the same situation where the Asus ROG Ally X is going to be using the same screen. So from an upgrade path, no, it's not really recommendable based on what is currently available. If you don't own any handhelds whatsoever, then yes, but based on whatever the price is going to be on the Asus ROG Ally X, it would be recommendable. It's going to be a better case. The Ally should have been from the beginning kind of thing, right? 32 gigs of RAM, bigger battery, same display, same chip, maybe potentially better ergonomics. But yeah, I think this is going to be a more refined Ally, but that's a small use case of who's going to upgrade to that. I am still pleased that Asus continues to evolve. They're upgrading the Armory Crate in here. They seem like they're going to be supporting this handheld subcategory of computers, so I'm really excited with what Asus is doing here. A special shout out to my YouTube channel members as well as my Patreon members. Your guys' support really means the world to me. Thank you so much. I hope this video was informative. As always, guys, thank you for your time, and thanks for watching.